Have you been to Chicago lately? I think it might be one of the most exciting cocktail towns in the world, and I'm thrilled that we're going back to it this week to meet two more of its mixology maestros. I'm Susan Schwartz, your drinking companion, and this is Lush Life Podcast. Every week, we're inspired to live life one cocktail at a time by the best in the industry. Last week, we heard from Shelby Allison of Lost Lake, a tiny slice of Tiki Heaven in Logan Square. This week, we'll be hearing from Abe Vucekovich of the Violet Hour and Vlad Novikov of Z-Bar at the Peninsula Hotel Chicago. First off, we meet Abe, general manager of the Violet Hour in Wicker Park, probably one of the most iconic bars in the country. Winner of the James Beard Foundation Award for Best Bar Program and about 1,000 other awards. Abe gives us a history on how it came to be and the origin of a few of their classic cocktails.
Hey, I'm Abe Vucekovich. I am the general manager here at Violet Hour in Chicago. Started here as a host and quickly became a bar back. Ran some food also, and then bartended. And
how long ago did you start?
4.5 years ago.
Okay. So the Violet Hour was already...
Violet Hour is already
doing its thing.
In full motion, yeah. So the Violet Hour itself has been open 12.5 years now, summer of 2007. So it has been here for a bit. One of the first, we like to call ourselves a pre-prohibition style cocktail bar. And one of the first like this in Chicago. Before us, the only real, I guess, cocktails you could get were at Gibson's Steakhouse, and they're like the huge martinis with all the blue cheese olives in the world. But we don't, we're different. And when we first opened up, there are other places. The Whistler was around when we opened up. It's still in existence, a wonderful cocktail bar. And a place that's now closed called the Drawing Room, which was open, which was like us too. So yeah, we've been doing this for a little bit.
So what made you different from, say, Gibson's?
Sure. Well, before us, cocktails, what we now know as the cocktail renaissance, I guess what some people, the modern cocktail renaissance, is something that started in New York, really. And one of the main figures is Julie Reiner, and there's Sasha Petrosky and Audrey Saunders. These are some of the people in New York that really, Dale DeGroff, helped to rethink about cocktails. There was sort of this dark period in the 80s and 90s when it came to cocktails. I mean, a time and a place, but yeah, they thought again about how to make drinks well.
Well, how did that New York idea make its way to Chicago?
So there's a guy named Toby Maloney who worked at a place called Milk and Honey that was ran by Sasha Petrosky, a tiny little bar, but super influential.
When was he working there?
He was working there in the early 2000s. And
I may have met him.
You may have met him. But that bar sort of influenced a lot of people, not just bartenders, but clientele. And people who went in there have been blown away. And so Toby was trained there amongst other places, and sort of took a lot of things he learned from Sasha and brought them over here to Chicago.
And why did he come to Chicago?
Because he had worked here before. He had worked for Terry Alexander, one of our managing partners, and he was chucking oysters in Chicago in, I think, the 90s it was, in one of his restaurants. And he came back and says, "Hey, Terry, I want to open a cocktail bar. What do you think?" And he was on board and brought in some people, trained the opening staff, and it sort of took off from there.
Was it automatic that people...
I think there was for the public, there was a learning curve, I guess is the way to... Chicago, we like, our Malort and our old styles and our yous to each other. We're a little bit more rough around the edges in some ways, and we were different. Our murals out front, we've never had a sign. People come in and these huge drapes and chandeliers and high back chairs and these cocktails that with ingredients people had never heard of before. that weren't just highballs and shots.
Like what were some of the original, maybe kind of now have become classic cocktails?
There are a couple. One of them it's sort of one of the drinks that is beloved by many and is in other cocktail bars. It's called the Juliet and Romeo. Toby made that for a lady he was seeing at the time who was not into gin, but liked vodka. And so it was sort of his way of making a drink that she would like that had gin in it. It's a simple gimlet with some mint and cucumber, rose water, Angostura bitters, a little bit of salt, but well balanced and beautiful. And it is, it's a drink that really influenced me when it talks about balance in a drink. Which is
before we go into more of the drinks,
sure.
Since you've been here,
yeah.
It's pretty much 5 to 7 years since it was open.
Yes.
Have you seen a change since you've been here? Till now, of the customer.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think people, our customers, are way smarter when it comes to their knowledge base of spirits and cocktails. I think now our consumers are well versed and know a lot about even specific spirits, especially things like bourbon or mezcal. They come in and they know a lot.
Do they ask specifically for things that you might not have?
They do. Oh yeah, things that maybe even some of our bartenders have never heard of. And cocktail bars are everywhere now. Every new restaurant has to have a cocktail bar program, so it's very much a part of the psyche of the public now. And so that is, I think, elevated us to also know as much, if not more, of everything. But in terms of changing, I think the spirits have changed, the clients have changed, but this place is essentially stayed the same. And a lot of our bartenders have moved on to open other bars around Chicago and around the country. So there's a little bit of a revolving door of people here. So there's always, our staff are always learning the Violet Hour way of doing things. And so in that way it keeps it fresh. The people have changed, but the philosophy and the drinks.
You said the Violet Hour of doing things. Could you encapsulate that in like a few words, what that is?
Sure. I think two things are really important to us. I think one is knowledge and skill, being able to make drinks really, really well, but also service and how we accommodate our guests. One of our bar managers had once said that we take cocktails and drinking very, very seriously, but we do our best not to take ourselves too seriously. I think the worst thing in the world is a bartender who thinks that their Negroni is going to change the world, And I think what we're trying to do is a service. We're trying to, it may seem corny, but it's like the Cheers thing, Everyone feels welcome, and this place can be intimidating for a lot of people, but we try to be as welcoming as possible, and I think that's one of the ingredients in cocktails that is important. I think if the service is good, hospitality is super welcoming and accommodating, then honestly the drinks taste better.
Could you tell me about maybe another one of your signature cocktails that was created by someone who was here? Sure.
A drink, there's so many. I really like them all.
How about, say, the Art of Choke?
Sure. That one sort of it kind of broke the mold in some ways, because it is a stirred drink with a little bit of citrus, which kind of goes against what a lot of bars and bar programs think of. Typically, drinks with citrus or egg white or cream are shaken. Drinks without are stirred. But this one has a little bit of lime juice. Green chartreuse, chinar, rum, demerara syrup, and some fresh mint, and it's delightful. The acid from the citrus and the bright alpine notes from the chartreuse, which is a pretty aggressive ingredient, then the lovely bitter earthy chinar, all together sort of balanced perfectly, and it's a lovely drink.
And that was one of your original cocktails, right?
Yes, from our original.
And 12 years ago, I don't imagine that many people drinking Chinar, except I guess if you're an Italian.
Yeah.
You just
right.
So that was so new.
Yeah, it was new. And people also, so a lot of people think that around that time, people's general palates were not so inclined for things that are more on the bitter side. But that drink, with the fat aspect, it's a term we borrow from cooking. It's off-putting to some people, but the demerara syrup in there, counteracted with the acid from the lime juice, and then all the other notes together, sort of bring out all the wonderful flavors. So they're not just bitter and harsh, but it's a lot more complex. So it's essentially a rum old-fashioned kind of thing, but it definitely breaks the mold, and it's delicious.
And it's still on the menu, right?
We still make it. Our menu changes every season. So all of our bartenders here contribute to the seasonal cocktail menu. So they go through a 6-month training program here with Toby and our bar manager, and then once they are behind the bar, they submit drinks. We workshop them all together as a team. And Toby's not a kind of guy who just puts his own drinks all over the menu. He has all the bartenders come up and invent the drinks themselves. And that amount of creativity really lends to wonderful cocktail menus. A lot of places, just one person makes all the recipes, but we love that aspect of our bar team. And like the artichoke, it's not a Toby drink, but it's wonderful. Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about the James Beard Award you won?
Yeah, I was working that night. I was food running, and I had heard that it was James Beard night, and I was a Miller Lite kind of guy. I was very new to this world, and I was just running food, and then I heard that we won the James Beard Award, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. Who's James Beard? Is his beard wonderful? Like, and I realized it was such a big deal, and then everyone was so happy and joyful that we had won the award, and the night was spectacular.
How many years were you open before you won that?
We were open since 2007. We won in 2015, and we had been nominated. We were finalists for that award, I believe 3. Every year it's been a category in the James Beard Foundation. So, and then we won in 2015. So we've been open for, 8 years? Sorry, I studied English 8 years, yeah. But yeah, it was, it's just us and then the Aviary in Chicago. And the list in general is pretty short in terms of bars that have that award. So it is very special.
So you really changed things for the Chicago cocktail scene? I
think so. And it is also something that we definitely continue to strive to deserve. We try not to rest on that as like a thing, like, oh, we won the James Beard Award, so we can, we're awesome. But we're always striving to live up to that standard, which is a good reminder. It's right by our restrooms. So every time I use the bathroom, sorry, it's a little weird, but I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, that's something we really want to continue to earn. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that night was really special, and I was asked that night, hey, do you want a bar back here? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So the next day I started working behind the bar, and it definitely was a cool experience to be a part of.
Cool. All right, fabulous. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure. No, thank you.
Sorry if I rambled.
No, I love rambling. Are you kidding? We ended the evening trying both the Juliet and Romeo and the Artichoke, which is my new favorite cocktail. But now it's time to head to the Z Bar at the Peninsula Hotel Chicago, sitting above the magnificent Mile, the center of Chicago's downtown, with an incredible view of all those famous skyscrapers. But my attention was only on the cocktails in front of me. Vlad, the general manager, was on hand to tell me about the bar and how both Tsiporo and Mystica found their way into my cocktail glass.
My name is Vlad Novikov, and we are at Z Bar at the Peninsula Hotel in Chicago.
Fabulous. And so tell me a little bit about the bar.
So the bar is, in general, our tagline is globally inspired, locally crafted. Overall, it's a very cocktail-focused bar, and most of our cocktails, if not all of them, have a reference to some sort of a place or have a locally crafted element to them. But all the cocktails have a story.
Well, can you tell me some of the stories of the cocktails?
Of course. I would have to mention the Z cocktail, which is, of course, our eponymous cocktail. It was one of the first cocktails that I made for the bar, and it was inspired both by Chicago and by the bar itself, specifically who the bar was named after, who's Mrs. Maria Zek, the first female general manager of the entire Peninsula Hotel group.
Right.
Yeah, in the 150-year history, she's the first female general manager, and after her 18 years of service here, to honor her, they decided to name the bar after her. And the cocktail itself is actually designed with elements that she likes, and it's designed to reflect the bar in Chicago. It's based in a local Koval gin. It's a play on a Southside cocktail, so it's got lime juice, and instead of a simple syrup, we're using an Italian bergamot rosolio, and we're using a house-made cucumber syrup that we do. It's very fresh with mint, and we do that where the only water in the actual syrup is from the fresh cucumbers. So it's very vibrant and concentrated and refreshing. The cocktail is actually even served in a bespoke glass that we got produced, where the pattern on the glass is the same exact pattern as our roof, which is a full-color light-up roof. Very
Sounds
exciting.
amazing. Now, you said you created this cocktail.
That's right.
Tell me about how you created the whole cocktail menu, because you were the one who did that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that the cocktail menu, some of the cocktails have been in the works more or less for a couple of years, because a lot of them are culminations of either places I've been or concepts that I've wanted to do that I maybe haven't been in the right location that I've been able to execute them. For example, we have our Manhattan Royale, which is an absolutely absurd cocktail. We use rare whiskey in it, and it ends up costing, it's $100 Manhattan. That's on our menu, but we also have an even more obnoxious $275 price, but it's incredibly rare whiskey with beautiful crystal handmade glassware. And just to be a little bit self-aware, I guess, we put a 24-karat gold leaf embedded in the ice and truffle bitters on top. So it's just a very decadent and extravagant Manhattan.
As you would expect in the Peninsula Hotel in Chicago.
We try.
And what are some of the other things that you had brewing and, you were able to kind of invent them or create them
Absolutely.
here?
I love to travel, and very much Z-Bar is supposed to be globally inspired, so a lot of that inspiration I took from my own personal travels. In fact, we have a cocktail called the Pralia on the menu, which is inspired by my time in Greece. I studied classics in college, so we ended up spending about 2 weeks in Greece touring the Peloponnese and the Cyclades at the conclusion of those studies. And it actually includes both a tsiporo and a mastika, which are beautiful Greek, a spirit and a liqueur that really bring a very unique and but still approachable flavor to the cocktails.
And just one more place that inspired you that you created a cocktail out of.
Every year I go to New Orleans, and one of my bartenders is from Louisiana, so both of us really wanted to create a cocktail that was representative of Louisiana, New Orleans, and specifically the French Quarter. So you have this beautiful Vucekovich riff with a locally produced plum brandy. It also has a mist of a peated scotch on top of it. But overall, it's just this very instantly alluring, simple on appearance, but then very complex when you taste, which to me is New Orleans and very much so the French Quarter, where on the surface level it seems very simple, but the moment you start diving in, it gets more and more exciting and really complex.
You're going to make it really hard for people to choose to have one of these cocktails. We're going to have many, all of them.
That's the goal, and realistically we have a lot of cocktails where I really hope that there's something for everyone.
Well, thank you. I'm so thirsty. Can we go to the bar and try one of these?
Let's go to the bar and have a drink.
Thank you to both Abe and Vlad for taking the time to sit down with me. I only wish Chicago were closer. If you're headed to Chi-Town, then you won't want to miss my Lush Guide, which points you to just a sampling of the fabulous things to drink, eat, see, and do. Until then, let's make our cocktail of the week, invented in Chicago and already a modern classic. Artichoke in a cocktail? That might not be your first choice, But our cocktail of the week, the artichoke, shows that you can sometimes surprise yourself. Combine all the ingredients in a mixing glass over ice. 1 ounce of white rum, 1 ounce Cynar, the Italian artichoke spirit, 3/4 of a teaspoon of lime juice, 3/4 of a teaspoon of demerara syrup, that's 2 to 1 demerara sugar to water, and 1/4 ounce of green chartreuse. Now stir. Then strain into a rocks glass over ice and garnish with a mint sprig. You'll find this recipe, more rum recipes, and all the cocktails of the week at alushlifemanual.com, where you'll also find all the ingredients in our shop. I really have to thank Carrie Medina of Choose Chicago for planning so much of our trip to Chicago. It is such a luxury to meet someone who gets what you do and want and puts it into action. She was a star. If you live for Lush Life, would you consider supporting us by buying us a coffee? Just go to buymeacoffee.com/lushlife and you can donate once or monthly to make sure we are still here every Tuesday. Theme music for Lush Life is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. And Lush Life is always and will be forever produced by Evo Terra and Simpler Media Productions. Which leaves me to say the wise words of Oscar Wilde: all things in moderation, including moderation, and always drink responsibly. Okay, the second part was mine. So, next time on Lush Life, we have someone from a family that has been distilling gin since 1762, and it's now winning award after award. Until that time, bottoms up.